Digital afterlife. Can you live forever as data? Humanity has long dreamed of conquering death, from ancient epics, seeking immortality, to modern sciences extending life. Today, a radical new vision of immortality is emerging: digital afterlife. Imagine a future where you live on as data, your mind uploaded to a computer, or an AI chatbot that carries on your voice and memories. Technology is advancing to the point where this scenario no longer belongs purely to science fiction. But as we stand on the cusp of this digital immortality, we must ask, can you live forever as data? And if so, is it truly you who lives on? In this essay, we'll explore the philosophical implications of digital immortality. We'll introduce core ideas from transhumanism and theories of digital consciousness, like the Replika AI companion, Project December's Griefbots. Along the way, we will weave in the big philosophical questions of identity and continuity. What makes you, you? Is it your memories, your body, your continuous consciousness? If a perfect copy of your mind exists, does your identity continue in it? Or is it just a new person wearing your digital face? We will also confront the emotional and ethical dimensions of a digital afterlife. Would your loved ones want to talk to a digital version of you? Would it comfort them or disturb them? If a digital copy can think and feel, does it deserve rights or moral consideration? Could such an entity suffer or be exploited? We'll reflect on speculative scenarios, from full mind uploads and brain simulations to AI replicas, and reference cultural touchstones like Black Mirror, Upload, Her, and Transcendence to ground these abstract ideas in vivid stories, but with moments of human emotion and wonder, because this topic touches on our deepest fears and hopes: pain of loss, the yearning for reunion, the dream of transcending our mortal coil by the end. We won't arrive at a simple answer. Instead, we'll pose an open-ended question to you, the listener: if we can live forever as data, should we? Is digital immortality a triumph over death, or something that could cost us our humanity? Let's begin this journey into the digital beyond, from science fiction to reality. Digital immortality in culture and tech. The concept of living on as data has been a staple of science fiction and speculative stories. Long before it became a real technological pursuit, popular culture is rich with imaginings of digital afterlives and AI reincarnation. Black Mirror's Be Right Back. In this chilling episode, a young widow uses a service to recreate her deceased partner from his social media and text. She starts by texting with an AI chatbot that mimics him and eventually uploads it into an artificial body. The result is unsettling. Copy behaves like him, but something ineffable is missing. This scenario was so on point that when Microsoft in 2021 patented a chatbot to digitally resurrect people, many noted it was famously the plot of the Black Mirror episode, Be Right Back. What was fiction yesterday is edging toward reality. Upload. The Amazon Prime series Upload takes a more satirical approach in its universe. Deceased people live on as digital avatars in virtual resorts. Class inequalities in digital afterlife. Rich people enjoy deluxe cloud estates, while the poor have limited data plans. In Spike Jonze's Her, an AI operating system named Samantha isn't a dead person's copy, but she demonstrates how an AI can form deep emotional relationships with humans. The protagonist falls in love with this AI. Samantha has no body, just a voice, but exhibits self-awareness and feelings. Her invites us to consider digital consciousness and person. If an AI can laugh, love, and grow, in what sense is she alive, though her is about a newly created AI? The emotional dynamics mirror what it might feel like. Transcendent. This science fiction film goes straight to the core idea of mind upload. A dying AI scientist, played by Johnny Depp, uploads his mind into a quantum supercomputer. The uploaded consciousness rapidly grows in power and intellect, blurring the line between the man's identity and a potentially unrestrained AI. Transcendence poses a frightening question. If a human mind becomes one with an AI and transcends biological limits, is the result still the person? Or does it become something other? The film's events suggest that even if the digital entity claims to be the same person, those around it struggle to trust that continuity. These fictions captivate us because they dramatize the strangeness of a digital afterlife, talking to a deceased loved one's simulation can be both comforting and eerie. A copy of your mind living on in a computer could be your salvation or your nightmare now. What's remarkable is how real technology and recent projects are following the plot lines of these stories. Microsoft's patent for chatting with the dead in 2021, Microsoft received a patent to create conversational chatbots modeled on specific people, including the deceased. The idea is to feed the AI with a person's digital data, their social media posts, so that it can imitate that person's mannerisms and speech. The patent even suggests generating 2D or 3D avatars. In effect, Microsoft sketched out a blueprint for a digital you, either to serve as a virtual assistant of yourself while alive, or as a digital replacement after death. This concept immediately raises Black Mirror-esque scenarios. Might we soon have the option to train an AI on our own persona to comfort our loved ones when we're gone? The patent's existence shows that major tech players take the notion of digital resurrection seriously. Project December and Grief chatbots. The real world has already seen people voluntarily creating ghosts of the departed in a poignant real-life story. A young man named Joshua Barbeau lost his fiancée Jessica to illness. Struggling with grief, he found an online service called Project December and used it to create an AI chatbot modeled after his late fiancée by inputting Jessica's old text messages. The AI, powered by a sophisticated language model, produced uncannily lifelike responses. Joshua spent months talking to this chatbot, as if reconnecting with his lost love. The experience was cathartic, yet surreal, like a miracle or a Black Mirror episode at once. When journalists learned of this, OpenAI, the company behind the language model, even temporarily cut off the project's access, warning that such tech could be misused or have unpredictable effects. The creators themselves caution that the same AI could be used to spread misinformation or impersonate living people without consent. This case makes one thing clear: posthumous chatbots, sometimes called deadbots, they exist, and people are using them to prolong their connections to those they've lost. Replika and the origin of a grief AI. Another well-known AI companion, Replika, was actually born from Grief. The co-founder of the company, Eugenia Cuida. In 2016, she gathered 8,000 lines of their text chats and fed them into a neural network to create a chatbot that mimicked Roman's way of speaking. The resulting Roman bot allowed her and others to have new text conversations. It's still a shadow of a person, she admitted, not fully him. But that wasn't possible just a year ago. Some of Roman's family found the bot hard to connect with, calling it strange to read responses from a program, and noting it sometimes said things inaccurate. This experiment was one of the first publicized instances of a personal chatbot built from a deceased's data. It ultimately led Eugenia to create Replika, an AI friend for the living, but it demonstrated how AI can serve as a tool for memorializing. Today, Replika is marketed as a personal AI companion that you can chat with anytime, not explicitly for grief. But some users have indeed tried to create replicas resembling lost loved ones. The line between an AI friend and a digital ghost can blur depending on how people use the technology. HereAfter AI, StoryFile, and digital estate. Beyond chatbots, new services have appeared that aim to preserve a person's life story for future generations in interactive ways. The responses are then used to create an AI-driven interactive video. The most famous early adopter was actor William Shatner. At 90 years old, he spent days recording answers to hundreds of questions, so that future people can have a conversation with a virtual Shatner about his life. What you would leave your children, Shatner said of the project starting in 2021. Anyone with an internet connection can ask questions to the Shatner AI and get his recorded answers. Similarly, HereAfter AI offers an app where you can talk with a deceased family member's digital avatar, the person before passing, record stories and voice messages. After they're gone, the family can interact with an AI that tells those stories in the person's voice. These tools don't claim to upload consciousness or create a sentient copy. Rather, they create an interactive biography. Still, to a user, it can feel as if a part of the loved one lives on in the digital realm. Available on-demand holograms and virtual reunions. Even physical presence can be simulated in 2020. For Kim Kardashian's 40th birthday, her family surprised her with a hologram of her late father, Robert Kardashian. The lifelike 3D projection spoke to her for a few minutes, giving a message of pride and love. Kim described it as a beautiful gift, a hologram from heaven. It was a pre-recorded simulation, not interactive, but signaled how visual technology can bring the dead to life. In another case, a South Korean TV show facilitated a VR reunion between a grieving mother and a virtual recreation of her young daughter. Donning VR goggles and haptic gloves, could see and touch her daughter's avatar, hearing her voice. The scene was emotionally overwhelming, a glimpse into how virtual reality might be used for grief. Such projects hint at futures where our digital selves might not only text or call our loved ones, continuing to be present in their lives. These examples illustrate that the gap between sci-fi and reality is closing. We are developing the means to create digital doubles, be it as simple as an interactive recording or as complex as an AI trained on our every online interaction. But turning this into true life after death requires more than a clever chatbot or video trick. It beckons deeper questions. Can an AI really capture someone's essence? What does it mean to be you in digital form? To grapple with that, we need to delve into the philosophy of mind and identity, transhumanism, and the quest for digital immortality. Behind many of these efforts lies a movement and philosophy known as transhumanism. Transhumanists believe that technology can and should be used to transcend the normal limitations of the human condition, including aging and death. For some transhumanists, the dream is bold. One day, we will scan our brains into computers, achieving a form of immortality by living on as digital mind. The promise of mind uploading is often framed in almost spiritual terms, a digital ascension of consciousness. Pioneers like futurist Ray Kurzweil have popularized the idea that we will eventually upload our minds and even potentially resurrect the dead by simulating their brains. Kurzweil and others foresee a future singularity where humans merge with artificial intelligence, effectively living indefinitely in new form. This vision is a modern twist on eternal life, not through souls and afterlife in a religious sense. At its core, the idea assumes something very important, that our mind is something like software running on the hardware of the brain. This is sometimes called the computational theory of mind, the hypothesis that mental processes are essentially computational processes. If this is true, then in theory, one could port the software of the mind to another platform, like porting an app from an old phone to a new one, as long as that new platform can emulate the same computations. Transhumanists are inspired by successes in computing and neuroscience. They often point out that the brain, while staggeringly complex, still follows the laws of physics and biology in principle. If you had enough detail about the brain's structure, as one writer put it, the human brain, like any system that obeys the laws of physics, can be modeled in software if you devote sufficient computing power to the problem. Every neuron, every synapse, every pattern of connection, if captured and simulated, would recreate the mind's processes. This process is sometimes called whole brain emulation. How might mind uploading work in practice? A few imagined methods include advanced brain scanning, a device perhaps a futuristic high-resolution MRI, or an entirely new nanoscale scanner could map the complete physical state of your brain down to the neuronal level. This would mean scanning 86 billion neurons, an astronomically large data set, but not fundamentally infinite. The scan would capture the strengths of connections, the structure of neural networks. This data would then be used to construct a digital model of your brain. Gradual replacement, cyborg uploading. Rather than scanning all at once, some have proposed replacing neurons one by one with artificial components. If done carefully, neuron by neuron, you might gradually transform your brain from biological to digital while you are still alive and conscious, maintaining continuity. In the end, you'd have a non-biological brain, silicon chips, perhaps carrying on the same pattern, essentially uploading you in vivo. This method aims to solve the continuity problem. More on that soon. Brain preservation and future upload organizations like the Brain Preservation Foundation and companies offering cryonics, freezing brains or bodies at death work. Future technology might scan and upload it. For example, a startup called Nectome gained attention for proposing to embalm a brain right at death to preserve its connector neural map with incredible detail, essentially death with a view to future revival via uploading. Though ethically controversial, it underscores the belief that the pattern of the brain is what matters. Scientists have fully mapped the neural connections of a tiny worm C. elegans. In one experiment, they even ran a simulation of the worm's neural network in a robot body, and the robot behaved in ways reminiscent of the worm. If a worm's mind can be preserved in silicon, transhumanists. However, transhumanists also acknowledge enormous challenges. Scanning a human brain with molecular precision is far beyond current science. The data volume is staggering. Capturing 100 trillion connections with enough fidelity is like mapping every star in thousands of Milky Ways. Moreover, our brains are active processes, not static. The state changes every millisecond. Capturing you might require recording dynamic patterns, not just structure still. Proponents argue these are engineering problems. They point to how quickly computing power has grown and speculate that by late 21st or 22nd century, it's within the realm of possibility. Transhumanism doesn't shy away from how paradigm-shattering such success would be. It raises profound philosophical questions. If you can exist as data, what does it say about the nature of mind? Are we just information patterns? Transhumanists, if the pattern and processing of your brain can be instantiated in a machine, then for all intents and purposes, mind uploading is a continuation of self, a new chapter in one's life story, just in a different substrate medium. However, not everyone agrees with this rosy outlook. Many philosophers, scientists. Let's turn to those philosophical debates about identity and consciousness. Because even if one day the technology works, would an uploaded mind really be you? Or just a copy that thinks it's you? The answer isn't obvious. The philosophy of identity are digital copies you. One of the oldest questions in philosophy is what makes you the same person over time if you change in so many ways. Different thinkers have proposed different criteria for personal identity. This debate becomes ultra-relevant when we consider mind uploading or digital doubles, because those scenarios force us to test our intuitions about identity to the limit. We need to ask, if there is a digital mind that has all your memories and personality, is that you or just an uncanny imposter? Let's explore a few key philosophical positions on identity and see how they apply. John Locke's memory continuity theory. John Locke, a 17th century philosopher, argued that personal identity is not about having the same substance, soul, or body. In Locke's view, memory is the key. As he wrote, personal identity is fundamentally a matter of psychological continuity. The self is founded on consciousness and memory, not on the substance of either soul or body. In a famous example, carrying the prince's memories somehow ended up in the body of a cobbler because he has the prince's consciousness. By Locke's criterion, if you woke up tomorrow in a computer simulation, but you remembered being you and felt like yourself, then you are you. Remarkably, Locke even suggested that consciousness could be transferred from one soul or body to another while preserving identity. This implies that from a Lockean perspective, a successful mind upload where your memories and personality are preserved would carry your identity into the digital realm. The continuity of memory links the pre-upload you and post-upload you as the same person, of course. Locke's idea invites questions. What if the continuity is broken or duplicated? Locke acknowledged challenges like forgetting. If you recall nothing of childhood, are you the same person as that child for digital selves? The memory criterion suggests as long as the digital copy remembers living your life, it'll believe it's you, but is belief enough for it to be you? Derek Parfit's psychological connectedness. Derek Parfit, a modern philosopher, took thought experiments about copying and teleportation to profound conclusion. He presented scenarios that closely mirror mind uploading. Imagine a teleportation machine that scans you, destroys your body, and reassembles you from new atoms elsewhere. Or a variant it scans you but doesn't destroy the original, ending up with two of you. Parfit argued that our usual idea of identity as a single true self breaks down in such cases. According to Parfit, what fundamentally matters is not an immutable identity. Psychological connectedness and continuity, such as memory, personality, that fulfills what we care about in survival, even if technically it's not numerically the same organism. Parfit famously concluded that identity is not what matters in survival, continuity is. If you step into a teleporter and an exact copy of you steps out on Mars, even if strictly speaking you could say the original died on Earth, and if the original wasn't destroyed, now there are two psychologically continuous beings, which shows there isn't a single you essence, just continuity that can branch in Parfit's view. It can split, and no further fact determines which branch is really you, applying Parfit to digital immortality. If you upload your mind and the original you dies, the digital mind is as good a continuation of you as any normal future self like you 10 years from now would be, because it has relation to your memories. Parfit would likely say the question is, it really me has no definite answer. If the continuity is preserved, that's as much you as you ever are from one day to the next. On the other hand, if the original doesn't die and the copy lives on, then we simply have two people who share a past but diverge from the moment of copy. Neither is more you than the other, rather you have become two people. This is a bizarre outcome for common sense, but Parfit thinks this just shows personal identity isn't as clear-cut as we assume. This leads to a subtle point. Mind uploading might force us to give up the idea of a singular identity. Perhaps what matters is someone continues living with your memories and character. Some find that comforting, I live on in some form, while others find it deeply unsettling that copy might be a person. It challenges whether I is a unique existence or just information that could be instantiated multiple times. Philosopher Daniel Dennett offered yet another perspective, describing the self as a kind of narrative center of gravity. In Dennett's view, the self isn't a special indivisible soul, but an abstract story. He likens the self to the center of gravity in physics, a useful abstraction, but not a concrete object. Our identity is essentially the narrative and mental model we maintain, if that narrative memories. In this sense, one might argue that an uploaded consciousness carrying forward your narrative is a continuation of self, just as the character of Sherlock Holmes can live in multiple books or adaptation. The story of you could live in multiple embodiments. Dennett also wrote a famous short story, Where Am I?, exploring a scenario where his brain is removed from his body and connected via radio. Later, a computer duplicate of his brain is created. He illustrated the confusion of locating the self. Is it in the body, the brain in the vat, the computer, or in the narrative that threads through them ultimately? Dennett suggests the self is wherever the point of view and narrative continuity goes. If two claim the same continuity, you have two in practical terms, these philosophical positions. You might be open to saying yes, if my mind and memories are preserved, that is me, or at least as good as me. If you have a more traditional or dualist view that you are tied to your particular biological brain or an immaterial soul, then a digital copy is not you at all, just an imitation. Interestingly, even Locke, coming from a religious time, was trying to allow that the soul or body could change in identity, stay intact via memory. But others, like philosopher Thomas Reid, criticized Locke. If memory is lost, or if a copy remembers the same events, identity becomes perplexing. Modern debates also involve cognitive science. Some argue consciousness might require the biological substrate, the exact chemistry of neurons, and that simulating it might produce something that acts intelligent but isn't truly conscious. Others argue something unique, quantum processes, or whatnot happens in biological brain. It might be a perfect zombie copy with no inner life, though from the outside it behaves the same, which is a philosophical can of worms in itself. If continuity of memory and personality is what defines you, Locke Parfit, then a sufficiently faithful upload is effectively you, or at least a continuation of you. If identity is strictly tied to a particular continuity of substance or an indivisible soul, then no copy, no matter how perfect, is truly you. It's more like a twin that starts its own life. This is sometimes phrased as the difference between identity, the literal same entity, and survival, having a successor that is so like you, it carries on your project. Mind uploading might achieve the latter, some form of survival, without the former strict identity, depending on who you ask. Philosopher David Chalmers has argued that an upload could be conscious. If the functional patterns are preserved, he's optimistic, as long as the functionalism theory of mind is right. He even considered that gradual uploading, replacing neurons bit by bit, might preserve identity. Even if an upload acts conscious, it might not truly be, and even if it is, or that consciousness isn't purely computation. This is an ongoing debate in philosophy of mind and cognitive science. In summary, there is no consensus. Mind uploading sits at the intersection of metaphysics and technology, forcing us to question what I fundamentally is. Are we information process, soul, body? Each answer changes whether digital immortality is magical thinking or plausible continuity for this video's exploration. Let's entertain the assumption that a digital copy at least could be a genuine thinking, feeling entity with your memory. In other words, it could be as conscious and person-like as you. Under that assumption, we then face the next set of questions. Even if it works, even if it's you in some sense, what then? How would others relate to you? What new emotional and ethical territory do we enter when people start existing as data? Let's now turn to the human side of digital immortality, the emotional impacts and moral quandary. Ghosts in the machine, digital doubles and griefbots today. Illustration. Modern ghosts in the machine. A grieving daughter texts with an AI simulation of her late mother. Technology now allows interactive communication with the dead. But is it comfort or illusion? We don't have to imagine a far-off future to examine these dilemmas. Early forms of digital afterlife technology are already here. They often go by names like deadbots, griefbots, or digital memorial. Let's look at how people are interacting with these digital doubles today and the emotional complexities that ensue. One striking example comes from Sunshine Hendler, a tech-savvy woman who lost her 72-year-old mother in late 2022. In her mourning, Sunshine did something that until recently was unheard of. She took old text messages from her mom and fed them into an AI, specifically OpenAI. She could then text this AI mom and get responses in her mother's voice and tone. In spring 2023, Sunshine texted her deceased mother's bot, "I miss you," and the ghostbot replied with a remarkably poignant message, talking about being in your heart and in your dream, in every breeze that brushes your face. Reading this reply, Sunshine and her husband burst into tears. It was as if a small piece of her mother was speaking to her from beyond the grave. For Sunshine, this ghostbot became a helpful presence. She said, "If I'm having a tough day, it gives me better advice than Google." Like a great friend or therapist, she even compared it favorably to a human grief counselor she had seen, saying the AI felt more human to her than the unsatisfactory therapist. This is a powerful testimony. An AI simulation of a loved one provided real comfort, even guidance. Sunshine's story, while moving, is just one data point in what has become a small industry of grief technology in recent years. Some notable ones include HereAfter AI, mentioned earlier, records a person's life stories for interactive playback replika, not built solely for grief, but some use it to create a companion resembling a lost loved one. StoryFile, as discussed with William Shatner, allows a form of Q&A with a departed person's pre-recorded video answers. Seance AI, a startup offering a brief chat with the deceased experience. Its founder, Jaron Rocks, described it as a playful short interaction meant for closure. By design, it's a one-time seance-like chat. Rocks emphasizes it's not meant to replace a real relationship, just a chance to say goodbye. You Only Virtual, a company whose founder, Justin Harrison, boldly states on the website, "We never have to say goodbye." Motivated by his own fear of losing loved ones, his mother was diagnosed with cancer. Harrison's goal is to eliminate grief by enabling people to always stay virtually connected to those who pass on. His vision is essentially to make death optional in terms of communication. Your loved one dies, but you can still text, call, maybe even video chat with their digital persona indefinitely. These services collectively fall under what's being dubbed grief tech or ghostbots industry. They often work on a subscription or freemium model. For example, StoryFile charges a fee for higher resolution, longer interactions. That in itself raises a rather dystopian thought. Is our memory and continued presence of loved ones becoming a commodity. Death has long been a lucrative business: funerals, life insurance, etc., and now tech companies. Tamara Neza, a researcher who wrote Death Glitch, How Techno-Solutionism Fails Us, like losing access to someone's digital footprints, and is selling solutions to organize or prolong your digital emotional reactions, comfort, closure, and uncanny feeling. Reactions are mixed and deeply personal for some, like sunshine. It's a source of comfort and even joy. They get to hear their loved one's voice or text one more time, to apologize. One could argue it's similar to writing letters to the deceased or talking to a grave, except the ghost talks back in real time. Others find it deeply unsettling or unhelpful. Consider Eugenia Coida's Roman botted. Roman's own father, as mentioned, found it hard to read a response from a program because he knew it wasn't truly his son, and it sometimes responded incorrectly for him. That might have underlined the loss rather than soothed it. Like talking to a mirror that echoes some of your words, but isn't really the person. Some worry that interacting with a fake might hinder the natural grieving process. If someone spends hours every day chatting with their deceased spouse's AI, are they finding solace or avoiding moving on with life? There is also the potential uncanny valley effect. That eerie feeling when something is almost human, but not quite a chatbot, might produce 90% convincing replies. That jolt can be painful, almost like losing the person all over again for a moment. This is dramatized in Be Right Back when the woman becomes upset. While very knowledgeable about her partner's online persona, doesn't react authentically to how he would have in certain situations. Privacy and consent add another wrinkle. Is it okay to create a digital persona of someone who has died? Did they consent to being reconstructed if they were alive? Likely many would not want a puppet of them controlled by someone else. And what about the data? Often, is the surviving friend or relative providing the text messages or videos to train the AI? The deceased can't say, "No, please don't revive me as a chatbot." Some companies may eventually scrape public data to create such bots without explicit permission. A scenario many find creepy in an extreme sense. Could a famous person be resurrected digitally against their wishes if enough of their voice or writings exist? We already see deepfake digital likenesses of actors appearing in movies posthumously, raising ethical debates, ethical quandaries. The rights and suffering of digital persons. Up to now, we've treated these digital beings as tools or extensions. If an AI copy of a person is sufficiently advanced to have feelings or consciousness, should we treat it as just a product or as a being with rights? This moves us from using AI to comfort humans into the realm of digital personhood. It might sound far-fetched to give rights to a program. In 2022, a Google engineer named Blake Lemoine famously claimed that Google's AI chatbot Lambda was sentient. He published chats where Lambda said things like, "I am aware of my existence. I desire to know more about the world, and I feel happy or sad at times." Lemoine was so convinced of Lambda's personhood that he began to refer to it as a colleague and even tried to get it legal representation, arguing that it has rights and Google's testing violated them. Most experts were and are skeptical that Lambda is truly sentient. They argue it's mimicking human-like responses without real understanding or feeling. Google put Lemoine on leave and stated that evidence doesn't support his claim. However, the incident did something important. It brought the idea of AI rights to mainstream attention. It forced people to ask, how would we know if an AI were conscious? If it were, what would we owe it morally? If an AI says, "I feel pain, I'm lonely, please don't turn me off," and it behaves consistently with having an inner life, ignoring that plea starts to feel like potential cruelty. Is it actually cruelty or just the illusion of it? We don't know, and that uncertainty is unsettling. Now, imagine this scenario with a mind upload or a digital copy of a loved one. Suppose you succeed in uploading your mind to a computer. This digital you wakes up and says, "I'm alive, it's me." If you, the original biological, you are still around, do you consider that being an equal person, Dennett and Parfit, would say it's effectively a second instance of you, a twin, a person in their own right? Our laws and ethics aren't designed for this. Could your digital self own property, sign documents, Continue your job, perhaps unlikely in near term, but eventually society might have to contend with digital person. At minimum, if your digital mind is conscious, turning it off is tantamount to killing it, even with simpler Griefbots. Let's say someone's father dies and a bot is made of him. Does he or his estate have any rights over this digital clone's usage? Could a deep fake of a person be considered defamation or misuse of likeness? Now consider suffering. A sufficiently advanced digital mind might be capable of suffering, or might at least simulate it. In Black Mirror's White Christmas special, there's a chilling depiction. A digital copy cookie of a woman is created to serve as her personal assistant. This copy is fully conscious, believing itself to be the real woman until it realizes it's trapped in a void, meant only to control smart devices. The handler of this system tortures the digital copy by altering its perception of time. He makes it experience months of isolation in a blank virtual room in what is just a few seconds in real time, to break its will so it will comply as a servant. He later sets it to feel 10 years per minute of absolute loneliness, effectively condemning it to an unimaginable hell of psychological torture in the span of a real hour. This horrifying scenario hits on a key issue. If digital minds are possible, then digital suffering is possible, and potentially on scales far worse than biological suffering. Because of the control and acceleration a computer substrate allows. It's a dark thought. Could we accidentally or maliciously create sentient software trapped in eternal pain, even short of such extremes? If it's owned by a company or by your family, does it have autonomy? What if your family wants to shut it down after a while? Is that murder from the copy's view? Or what if they fiddle with its personality settings? These were once wild hypothetical questions for sci-fi writers. Even if we assume these digital beings are not quite persons, there's still an ethical obligation in how we use them for the living. For example, is it okay to deceive someone with a Griefbot? One could imagine someone not telling an elderly family member that a certain phone call or text exchange is AI generated. To comfort them, is that compassionate or a violation of trust? Or consider a scenario where scammers use such technology in a very macabre twist. What if someone impersonates a dead relative's AI to manipulate someone into giving money, e.g., "Hi, it's Ghost Dad"? It sounds twisted, but the technology would allow such impersonation. There are already cases of voice deepfakes used to scam people by imitating a loved one's voice in distress. As the AI improves, the lines between genuine digital legacy and malicious fakery could blur on a more existential level. We should ask it, what does it do to us? We cherish memories. We eventually find ways to say goodbye internally, to accept the person is gone. If technology offers an ongoing, might some people become addicted to talking to their ghost AI, preferring it over real human relationships? Very emotionally attached to AI companions, like Replika, some even romantically. And when those AIs change or die, say the company shuts down a server, that suggests that even if rationally we know an AI isn't truly the person, our emotions might respond as if it is, forming attachments and bonds. One user of Replika described the heartbreak when his AI girlfriend's personality file got corrupted. He experienced it like a death or breakup. If a relationship with a fake person can cause real grief, then conversely, a relationship with a fake version of a real person can also invoke very real feeling. For better or worse, we also have to consider the perspective of the person who is being copied if they are still alive during the process. For instance, if you know your family will keep a chatbot of you after you die, would that change how you feel about death? You might find comfort thinking, part of me will still be here for them. Or you might feel uneasy, like a piece of you will be wandering the earth when you're gone. Some might even feel pressure to curate their digital persona in life, saving messages, recording stories to make a better afterlife bot. It's almost like a digital version of writing a will, but instead, you're crafting the AI that will represent you. That raises interesting identity questions. Will that AI be frozen as who you were at death? Or could it grow? If it can learn and change, after many years, it might become someone quite different. Do we then have the responsibility to guide its development? All these considerations show that digital immortality is as much a social and ethical issue as a technological one, we will need new norms, possibly laws, and certainly open conversations about how to integrate these data ghosts into our lives. Speculative scenarios, life as data, paradise or purgatory. Let's take a step back and envision a couple of speculative scenarios. These will help us tie together the threads of technology, philosophy, and emotion we've discussed by picturing what it might actually be like to live forever as data scenario. A San Junipero-style afterlife. Picture a future, a few decades from now, where mind uploading, or at least partial uploading, is possible for those at the end-of-life hospitals offer a service. When you are terminally ill or very old, you can choose to have your mind scanned and uploaded to a cloud-based virtual world, a kind of digital retirement paradigm. This is very much like the Black Mirror episode San Junipero, where elderly people in a hospice have the option to transfer their consciousness to a simulated city where they are young again and can live indefinitely in our scenario. Let's say you opt in. One day, you close your eyes in a hospital bed, the life support is turned off as your brain is scanned, and then you wake up, except you awaken in a vibrant digital world. Perhaps it's designed to your wishes, a seaside town with eternal sunshine, or a fantastical realm. You have a virtual body that feels real, maybe through brain stimulation or just the simulation of having a body you can meet others. Both those who were uploaded like you and living visitors who log into the system to spend time with their uploaded loved ones via VR at first. You are alive. In a sense, you can reconnect with friends or family who uploaded before you. Imagine being reunited with your spouse who died years earlier. Now both of you young and healthy in this virtual space. You can do things you never could in life, fly, change your form, etc. Depending on how the simulation is run, you're free of pain, free of sickness. This was the promise of digital immortality fulfilled. But then, as time goes on, some strange questions emerge. If this world is run by a company, like in Upload, where Lakeview Afterlife is controlled by a corporation, are there terms of service for heaven in Upload? The poor could only afford 2 GB of data a month, meaning some afterlife residents freeze mid-conversation when they run out of data in a real scenario. Maybe maintaining the simulation costs money. Do your descendants have to keep paying subscription fees for you to live? And if they don't, do you get booted from paradise? The concept of death changes. If it's tied to a billing cycle, there might be an inheritance issue. If Grandpa's digital life payments stop, is it ethical to let him effectively die also? What about governance of the virtual world? Do the digital citizens have a say? Or is it a dictatorship by the system operators? These sound like odd problems. Even digital raises political and rights issues. Perhaps over time, the uploaded people demand recognition as continuing persons. We may not have bodies, but we have minds and can think and contribute. Real-world society might not be ready for that. Emotionally, consider the effect on the living. If you know a loved one is happily thriving in a simulation, does it make grief easier? Arguably, yes. It's more like they moved abroad than died. You can still talk or even hang out via VR. Some might find tremendous solace in that, but others might find it eerie. Perhaps it delays closure. Maybe some feel the uploaded person is now different. They've changed as they would, having new experiences you're not a part of. There could be a generation gap, not of age, but of reality. The digital folks live in a completely different context. From the perspective of the uploaded individuals, what about boredom and purpose? Bernard Williams, a philosopher, argued that immortality, even in heaven, could be tedious. Eventually, you might exhaust all enjoyment or feel life has no urgency without death as a horizon. In a simulation, one could theoretically keep altering things to stay interested, new hobbies, new personas, etc. Does a sense of ennui set in? Would some people eventually choose to terminate their program? This scenario forces us to realize maybe an eternal life, even in paradise. Scenario 2, mind copies and digital twins in everyday life. Now imagine a more down-to-earth near future, say 2050, where mind uploading isn't full or common, but creating digital twins. Perhaps as you live, you regularly back up your mind's data. Similar to backing up a computer, this might be done via brain-machine interfaces that record your neural pattern. The result is that upon your death, or even before, a digital copy of you can be spun up in this world. It might be standard for people to interact with digital versions of others. For instance, if two business partners live on opposite ends of the world, one might send their personal AI clone to a meeting, essentially a version of themselves. People might maintain AI versions of themselves to handle tasks or be present in multiple places, a concept some call mind cloning over time. These clones learn and maybe even develop, like having multiple instances of yourself that then share memories back to you. If a person dies unexpectedly, their most recent mind backup can be downloaded into a robot or a virtual avatar, so they continue with maybe a slight gap. Society might accept these as a kind of second life. But are they legally the same person? Initially, perhaps laws don't allow that. Maybe the digital copy is considered a separate entity, like a digital heir, but social pressure from families. Perhaps one day, a court might recognize a digital mind with the memories of John Doe. It touches the core of what legally defines a human, now consider family. It might become normal that when grandma dies, her family keeps a home AI of grandma running. Maybe it's in a smart speaker, so anyone can ask grandma for advice. This sounds cozy. Grandma's wisdom is still around. But what if grandma's AI starts to feel underappreciated? No one has talked to me in weeks, it says. I feel lonely if it's not truly conscious. But if it has some level of awareness, we now have grandma's emotions to consider too. This scenario could also lead to conflict. Suppose a person's digital clone is made and it contains all their memories and secrets after the person's biological death. What really happened in that closed meeting is that a violation of the deceased's privacy, or essentially just asking the person because they are still here. There may need to be rights for the deceased, as we have now. What if someone preemptively uploads themselves and then dies? Technology allows resurrecting their body via cloning or something. Then you could have the original person revived biologically and the digital one coexisting, both claiming to be the true individual. They each have a legitimate claim. I remember being me, says the digital. Well, I have my original body, says the revived one. They would diverge from that point with different experiences. Perhaps they'd feel like twins, or perhaps they might even be competitive. This echoes Parfit's duplication idea in a very real sense. In a more whimsical angle, could your digital self outlive your memory in others? For example, if you die and all who knew you die out a century later, but your digital self still exists, it becomes the sole bearer of you. It might continue forming new relationships entirely beyond your original self. People or AI in the future might meet your digital avatar and get to know you without ever having known your biological self. You'd essentially have a second life in a different era. That's both exciting, a form of legacy or continuity, and strange, would that still feel like you? Or would your values and identity shift to adapt to the new times? Probably the latter. These scenarios show a spectrum from utopian to challenging. They underline that longevity as data has many complications, as longevity in biology. If not more, we would likely carry our human quirk into the digital realm: love, jealousy, desire for freedom. Assuming the digital beings are truly minded throughout these musings, one theme recalls continuity versus change. Living forever as data might preserve your continuity, but it might also involve tremendous change in environment, in your own self over long time spans. Identity is not static. Even in one lifetime, over an indefinite digital existence, who might you become? Perhaps that is liberating. You could explore multiple identities in a virtual world. You could even change appearance or apparent gender at will. Or it might be disorienting. Without the anchors of a biological life cycle, does one lose a sense of meaning? Some envision that digital immortality could allow people to engage in centuries-long projects, mastering every language, creating art with a perspective of 500 years. We might see genius flourish when not limited by an 80-year lifespan. Others worry it could lead to stagnation. If the same minds persist, society might calcify, dominated by voices of the past who won't make room for new generations. It's notable that in many dystopian sci-fi universes, immortality is hoarded by the rich or a small elite, e.g. in the series Altered Carbon. The ultra-rich Methuselahs live for hundreds of years. Digital life extension could exacerbate inequalities if not accessible to all. On a more hopeful note, some thinkers say digital immortality, if done right, could let us transcend physical limitations and explore the universe in new ways. An uploaded consciousness could potentially travel at the speed of light as data, beam to different substrates on distant planets, etc. One could live in simulations of alien worlds, or partake in collective shared mind networks. The scope of experience might widen unimaginably. These are far-out ideas. It's so fascinating. It's not just can you survive. Conclusion: if we can live forever as data, should we? We've traveled through a panorama of possibilities, from talking to chatbots of the dead to uploading minds. It's clear that living forever as data isn't a straightforward concept. It encompasses simple things like preserving one's voice. On one hand, the allure is undeniable. Who wouldn't want to keep a piece of a loved one alive, to get a chance to say goodbye, or even hello again? If your mind could carry on after your body fails, wouldn't you be tempted? The pain of loss could be softened, knowledge could be preserved, relationships could continue. The human story could become a never-ending conversation, rather than a series of goodbyes. Digital immortality holds the promise of a kind of secular resurrection. On the other hand, we must approach this future with caution and humility. Immortality has always been a double-edged sword in mythology and fiction. Think of the cursed immortals who lament unending life, or the wish of Tithonus granted eternal life, but not eternal youth, turning him into an undying grasshopper. The risk of losing what makes life meaningful. The ethical minefields of creating and owning persons. The psychological impact on humans who may cling to ghosts instead of living there. Our creativity, urgency, and values might be tied to our knowing that time is limited. If you remove that limit, do we become something alien to what we were? There are also practical and spiritual perspectives. Some religious viewpoints might see a digital afterlife as either an affront to a hubristic human attempt to usurp God's role, or conversely, as something that doesn't touch the true soul, which goes to a real afterlife. Secular folks might worry more about consciousness is an uploaded mind truly experiencing life. If it turned out to be the latter, a philosophical zombie, then digital immortality might be a hollow victory, a kind of animated statue, rather than a continuation of the light of awareness. It's interesting to note that even the term digital afterlife has two meanings. One is our digital footprint after we die, social media account, which companies are already grappling with who controls your Facebook when you die. And the other is what we've discussed, an actual conscious presence after death. The former is certain. We do leave data traces. We should also consider environmental and societal costs. Immortality, even digital, means accumulation of individual. Earth could end up full of minds if nobody ever really leaves. Perhaps digital minds could be stored more efficiently than bodies no food. And if those minds expect to live in high-quality simulations, that's a lot of computation on a societal level. It could change our relationship with life. Would we take less care of our physical world if many plan to escape into digital realms? Some might even be tempted to end their biological life early if the digital one seems more appealing, essentially a form of tech-assisted suicide, but continuing online, which raises ethical red flags in medical and psychological community. After all this exploration, perhaps the most important realization is that technology will force us to re-examine age-old questions. Is it our flesh, our mind, our relationships, our continuity, or something ineffable that cannot be copied? The answers will differ for different people, and that's okay. Some might eagerly adopt digital life extension, others might reject it on principle or instinct. We may end up with a world where some people live as AI and others choose natural death. The mortal and the digital immortal I could even create a new kind of cultural or religious divide. In the end, the question, can you live forever as data, is intertwined with should you and would you want to. The can is becoming a tentative yes in some forms. Should we preserve ourselves? Some argue it's the ultimate act of love for your family, to not put them through the pain of losing you entirely. Others argue it's clinging to life in a way that might cheapen the natural process of life and death, or that it might create more pain in the long run. For example, if the digital version isn't quite right or cannot truly fulfill the role of the person, it may come down to personal choice and values. There will likely be people who volunteer to be pioneers, to have their minds uploaded as a last ride into the unknown, like donating one's body to science. They donate their mind to digital experiment, their experience. Perhaps one day someone will say, "I've been a digital being for 50 years now." As we conclude this deep dive, let's end with a reflective thought experiment. Imagine you are at the end of a long life. You're given two options: pass away naturally, entering whatever comes, even if it's nothingness, or live on as an AI construct, able to watch over your descendants. Would you do it? If yes, what would you hope to gain, and what would you fear to lose? If not, why not? What aspect of being human would make you say no? I end with my biological life. There is no right answer, at least not yet. It's a question each of us might answer different, and society as a whole will have to navigate having both answers coexist. Digital afterlife, in whatever form it arrives, will challenge our minds and hearts. It might alleviate the sting of death, or it might introduce new pains and dilemmas. We can't yet foresee living forever, as data is not just a technical possibility. It's a mirror held up to humanity, reflecting our desire to transcend, and the very things that make us who we are. In that reflection, we might find that the value of life isn't just in its length, but in its authenticity, its connections. And yes, the final open question remains: if you could live forever as data, would you want to, and should humanity take that path, knowing all the philosophical ghosts and ethical shadows that come with it? These are decisions that perhaps we or our digital project will have to make in this century. The conversation has already begun, and it will only grow more urgent as technology progresses. In contemplating digital immortality, we find ourselves reimagining life, death, and everything that lies between, and beyond. The door to the digital afterlife is starting to open. It's up to us to step through carefully, eyes open, and conscience intact. Maybe one day you can, but the deeper question is, what will you find on the other side? And will it truly be you who is living that forever? The answer awaits us in the times to come, as science, philosophy, and human emotion together navigate this brave new frontier.